Hey guys, welcome to the latest episode of Physique Science, and obviously we're doing a little bit different. We're filming this one, so for you, those of you listening to our disembodied voices on iTunes, I'm your host Layne Norton, and I'm here with my co-host Sohee Lee.
Hey.
But we also have a few special guests. So we have Bret Contreras joining us. Bret, say hi.
What's up?
Steve Cook.
What's up, guys?
And Miss Bikini Olympia Courtney King.
That intro, Miss Bikini, that's a
Whatever.
That's a nice ring to it.
Hope we can say Miss Bikini and Arnold winner.
We'll see.
Alright.
Hashtag Sue. Hashtag Sue.
Hashtag Sue.
So, you know, I've come out to Arizona because I'm prepping Steve and, and helping Courtney, and you know, I wanted to get a chance to talk to them because they kind of shook the mold in terms of people, big names in the fitness industry who do flexible dieting. I feel like now it's getting more acceptable. For a long time there, it's very taboo, you know, for anybody to admit that they ate outside the normal bro foods. And I guess I just kind of want to get your guys' opinion, and everybody kind of like a round table on this, is to...
An actual round table.
Yeah, actual round table. For those of us listening to us on the podcast, we're sitting at a round table. So I want to get your guys, one, what drew you to flexible dieting? And two, why do you think was shunned for so long in the fitness industry?
Do you want me to go first or you want to answer?
You take it away.
Yeah.
You're more of a... See, for me, I'm someone who's fairly new into flexible dieting. I'm not as good as eyeballing stuff or just kind of winging it as Steve, like we talked about, Layne. But Steve is very, very good. He knows, you know, really... He can look at something and be like, all right, well, this will fit, you know, this one, I don't have room for this. For me, I'm not that experienced, I guess, in the whole flexible dieting. I still do take that approach where I'm not so, you know, restricted and crazy and it has to only be these meals 6 times a day. But, yeah, so you start with how...
Well, I'll start off by saying I think our favorite game, this is when you know you're prepping and you don't have a lot of entertainment in your life, my favorite game is to guess the grams on the scale before I put it on the scale. That might be and I'm like, hey, come check this out. I'm right on my
strawberries. Three strawberries. It was like, is this going to be 34 to 38? It was like 35.
Yeah.
Well, Steve and I let's play a game.
Yeah.
Steve and I, we did this earlier. We went to, what was it, Pokey?
Yeah, Pokey Place in Scottsdale.
And she said, okay, let's try this. Whatever I get, you write down what you think it is, protein, carb, fat wise, and I'll write it down. We're within 5 grams of everything, of each other.
You were.
So,
and I think I was probably overcompensating because when you're the one dieting, you always want to overshoot.
That, Steve.
But yeah, the way I got started off with flexible dieting is with Layne. I did an NGA show with a bodybuilder in Idaho, and he kind of prepared. He wrote out a meal plan for me. And it was my first, you know, introduction to bodybuilding. It was great. I remember, you know, I was a volunteer firefighter, and I looked forward every night to my protein bar that I got to eat. That was like my highlight of my day. And then I started reading, and this is about the time I started doing stuff with bodybuilding.com, and Layne was really big on there. And I started reading about it, and Dr. Joe, I actually prepped one show, the Muscle and Fitness Male Model Search with Dr. Joe. And then
I never knew that.
Yeah, and then it kind of led me into what Layne was doing. And I think it was, because, you know, right about that time that men's physique also started taking off.
Yeah.
So I did a lot of my men's physique. I won my pro card with Layne. And
you transitioned to NPC by that time?
Yeah,
right.
So I had. Yeah, that was by the time I transitioned to the NPC and then the IFBB. Did one NPC show, pro card, and then kind of took some time off. But it was really working with Layne that, like, it was hard for me for a while because I had this mentality that, like, I needed to be perfect. It's like a badge of honor to eat cold tilapia, sweet potatoes, and asparagus. Like, you have to get lean this way. And I realized, like, I came to a breaking point. I was either going to burn out in this industry and totally go crazy. Like, I remember getting done before I worked with Layne, just being like, I don't know how to go back to eating normal. Like, I can have a sandwich. Like, that apple's bad. Like, it was so weird. And I remember talking to people being like, I can't do this. Like, I'm not cut out. But really, that's that negative voice in your head. It's not that you're not cut out for it. You're not meant to do stuff like that. And so working with Layne, I think, really helped me to do that. And even since then, I've prepped eating normal or eating, even since the first time I prepped with Layne, I have prepped doing set meals again, eating the same thing over and over again at the same time. And it's not a lifestyle for me. And that's why I've taken the last 2.5, 3 years off. And this go around, I'll be stepping on stage in 2.5 weeks. Like, it's really been really easy. Today I had Chick-fil-A. Yeah, it's been so great. Today I've had chicken, also in part because Courtney helps. Courtney prepares a lot of the meals. But
seriously, I walked in your place like, are you hungry? Can I fix anything? I was like, wow. It's like going over to...
What macros do you want?
Seriously. Babe, hey. She's like, you want your 5 grams of chicken with the coconut rice, and then do you want the special dressing with that? I'm like, let's switch it up. So Courtney's amazing at making low calorie things taste good. My favorite thing she does, she puts stevia. I call her the stevia fairy because wherever she goes, there's like a stevia trail behind her.
I sweeten everything.
And it's this mustard. It's amazing mustard. Yeah, mustard with coconut aminos with some stevia, and to be honest, it is the best dressing on everything. Like I put a little in my hair to give it that.
You know what's so funny is when I first got into this industry though, I was with like a team that was like super cookie cutter. Every girl got the same plan. We're doing like 2 hours of cardio a day, like no lifting really. It's just like plyometric stuff. And on our meal plans, sodium was like forbidden. Like sodium was like you couldn't salt anything. I'm like, and now I'm like, I can't believe like I won't put like you couldn't even use mustard because there's sodium in like anything was salt. Isn't that crazy? But
we probably get
so much.
You probably get 3. I probably get 5 grams of.
I had a girl who was consuming 20,000 milligrams of sodium a day.
Really?
Wow.
Yeah, we probably get.
That was probably a little bit excessive. That was Katie Rutherford actually. That was pretty excessive, but she also drank like almost 4 gallons of water.
Yeah.
Wow.
4 gallons.
Yes.
That's like 12.
It would be like a fish peeing all the time.
Pretty much
4 gallons of water?
Yeah. That's like Lauren can't go anywhere like, wait a minute, I gotta go to the bathroom.
20 minutes. I need a bathroom every 20 minutes.
So why do you guys think that, like now it's getting more accepted? I think that in a lot of times, like I felt with a lot of things that kind of I was the guy out a lot of things. Bret probably feels this way with the hip thrust. I was out there taking like shots from people who were like, this is stupid, this can't work, this and that. And now it's become more accepted. But do you guys have any ideas? And I want Sohi, the psychologist over here, any ideas why you think like this method of dieting would be, people would shun it, that they would look like negatively upon it?
I think people take a lot of pride in taking the more hardcore approach, and I actually remember I think it was you, maybe 2 or 3 years ago, wrote a post on Facebook or somewhere about how people try to be hardcore by being stricter with their diets, but you said, what's actually hardcore is actually staying lean and maintaining that year-round, and that's harder to do. And you say, one of my clients a few years ago, she said, this is a total light bulb moment for me, she goes, extremes are so easy and moderation is so hard.
That's right.
And for someone to say, January 1st, I'm gonna go on this extreme diet and lose 50 pounds, everyone's like, oh wow, like look at you go. And they're saying, look at all these things I can't even eat. And the thing is, and this is actually what I'm kind of studying right now with my master's thesis in psychology, so it's interesting for me to really talk about this, but the more people restrain their diets, and there's this mentality that, and you think it makes sense. It's logically, if you're stricter, you're gonna get results faster. So why would I not go that route? But the problem is, it'd be fine as long as you were actually able to adhere to it day in and day out. But what happens with most people is that there comes a point where with me, and I'm sure with you guys too, after a certain number of weeks or months, you just reach a point of burnout where you're like, I can't do this anymore. And all of a sudden your adherence is dropping. For me, I know when I was working with my first coach, I was on a strict meal plan. Eventually I was on like 900 something calories a day, 6 days of cardio a week. I was a full-time college student. I was a freshman also, so trying to juggle all of that, and then by the end of the 6-month period, I had just gotten to the point where I was following the meal plan for 3 days and then binging every third day. I'd start binging, and then my weight, started creeping up, and I go, I don't want it, and for a long time I just kept thinking this isn't working because I'm not being strict enough. But that's actually the opposite of what you should be doing.
Yeah.
And I think, one of my clients just last week was telling me, in one of our check-ins, she goes, since working with you, I've prepped for a show, and I've put on maybe 2-3 pounds in the past 4 months since my show. I'm eating more than ever. I'm not spending my life in the gym. I'm doing no extra cardio. I feel good. And she goes, my coworkers ask me what I'm doing to stay this way, and I tell them, I don't restrict foods. I have a little bit of junk food. I have some of this. And they get angry. They actually got mad at her because it was almost like, well, if it's that easy to do, if it's that sustainable, now I have no excuse to not be able to do it. But
it wasn't easy because you had to learn how to
And here's the thing, the mindset, getting to that point mentally is the hardest thing, I feel like. And that's why I think it's important to teach people the ways of flexible dieting from the get-go, rather than just eat clean first and then we'll teach you how to rein it in later, because that's a really hard transition to make.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
We were talking about this, and I think the biggest thing is with, not necessarily with competitors, but with people out there that want to lose weight, just in the everyday life, that they think that there's some secret, that there's some, and they would.
Somebody called out, Steve Cook has a ripped 8-pack because he's not eating this one particular food, or he's eating this one food.
They would rather be given a meal plan than say, hey, I have to take it upon myself to read labels. And they don't realize that long term it's going to be so much easier if you it's going to be a kind of a pain in the butt for a week. You're going to have to look at everything, you're going to have to read, you're going to have to maybe write things down or get really familiar with a meal tracking app. And that's always hard to do, but guess what? And if you do it and you get familiar with it, a month or two goes by, and all of a sudden you're able to eyeball things, and again, it's mindful eating at that point, and that's really where you're actually seeing this, like, no, it's really not too bad, but like I know that like I have this budget in my day, and I know that food that I was eating, that Monster energy drink from the gas station that's not sugar-free, that has 42 grams of carbs, this is my brother talking. I'm like, hey, what'd you eat today? He's been trying to lose weight this year.
A pretzel and
a Monster. Like, do you realize for that same 42 grams of carbs, you could have had this, and this, and you're gonna feel so much better on it. But but if you love that Monster energy drink, guess what? Like you have this set amount of macros. Spend it on something else that you want. Have that pretzel maybe or whatever.
But the budget analogies is something we love. It makes sense. Like that Monster energy drink. That's a $80,000 sports car. Yeah. Right. Mm-hmm. Because you're not. It's depreciating asset. Yeah. Depreciating asset.
Unless you really love that.
Unless you really
love
it. But you're not. Even if you really love that sports car, if you make $90 grand a year or $100 grand a year, should you buy a sports car, $80 grand cash? Sure. If you can't pay your mortgage, you can't pay your utilities. Well, that's what that Monster is, right? So if drinking that or eating, something that's not very filling, if that causes you to not be able to take care of the things you need to take care of, hit your protein, carbs, and fats, hit your fiber, then you can't do it, right? So that's why I always say flexible dieting, when done properly, is self-regulating. And I bring up your example of the Snickers during contest prep, right?
Oh, this is the example. We just talked about this. You were the Snickers girl.
I forget
2 days. You're like, I don't want. She was saying saying she wants a salad. She doesn't want a Snickers.
Of course, because it's very dense. We had Dr. Mark Hub on our show. One of my favorite episodes, actually.
He's the Twinkie diet guy from.
Oh yeah, I remember that guy.
I think it was Kansas State. He's a nutrition professor at Kansas State.
Awesome interview. Yeah.
Ate like a Twinkies bar for like 90 days or something like
that.
Yeah,
he had to eat like a certain amount of junk
good amount of weight. His health markers actually improved.
They improved,
like his blood levels, they all got better because he was still losing weight.
Well,
body fat was going down.
That's the thing. The markers of health, like your markers of inflammation, blood cholesterol, blood lipids, all these things, it's a weight loss effect. It's not a healthy foods effect. If you look, there was a study done by Serwit, and I always reference this because I think it's a great example. They compared like over 100 grams of sugar intake per day versus about 10 grams of sugar intake per day, right? And they had them calorically restrict, same total calories. Both groups lost the same amount of weight, same amount of body fat, and all of them had improvements in their blood markers, but there wasn't any difference. The only difference was there was a very slight greater improvement in cholesterol in the group that had lower sugar. Both groups improved.
But not significant.
It was significant.
It was significant. Okay, so that was the
but you can explain it easily by the difference in fiber intake, because fiber binds cholesterol and causes you to excrete it. So the group that was low sugar had more fiber. That explains why the cholesterol was lower. My guess is you equate it for fiber, then you wouldn't see a difference. But even their markers of inflammation went down, right? So Mark Howell, when he would give a speech on what he did, he would go up and he would put up a profile of his nutrition of protein, carbs, fats, fiber, the vitamins and minerals, all that kind of stuff. And he would say, is this a healthy diet? And everybody would be going, he said, people were like, yeah, it's really good. Maybe a little bit low in vitamin K, but other than that, you're dead on. And then he would put up a picture of the foods he ate to get there. And I would say, is this a healthy diet? And I said, no. And he said, what if I told you these two were the same? You know,
Great.
But he did mention
that's a really powerful teaching strategy.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
And I think
I like that.
I actually, when I was supposed to debate this guy at ISSM, we were going to debate clean eating versus.
Backed out.
Of course, he backed out.
Always.
So me and Dan Newmeyer kept taking pictures like, where's he at? Like, I can't even remember the guy's name. But he put up in my opening statement for this was going to be, and I feel like this is pervasive throughout the fitness industry, people who look down on people who flexible diet. I went to his Instagram, and the first thing I saw was his cheat meal, his cheat day, 1 day a week, right? He has cheat day. I calculated the calories he had from junk food. It was about 7,000 calories, right? And then I went back and looked at how much junk food I ate per week, flexible diet.
So it's just spread out.
It was about 4,000 calories. So I was actually eating less junk food than the quote-unquote clean eater.
That's my
and Layne, that was kind of what we talked about too in our previous video. How I thought it was super good because I go hard Monday through Friday, and then Saturday night rolls around. It's like, all right, have a little something, your cheat meal, and then you kind of break it.
You reward yourself.
And then it's like you just go off the bandwagon because you've been
and then you spend 3 days trying to get back
and
down
then
to body weight.
all those calories that I just consumed within 24 hours. You go from Saturday night up until Sunday. It's just kind of like one of those days prior even,
and what you do is you put yourself on the roller coaster.
Exactly, and like that yo-yo effect.
One of my I put up, and I feel like it's one of my more brilliant memes I've ever put online. It was the Joker, like the Joker meme where it's like, do this and people do this, but do this and everyone loses their mind. So I said, binge on chocolate, no one bats an eye, but make it fit your macros and everyone loses their minds. It is true.
That's what your earlier question about why was there this backlash. I think that's one of the main reasons. It's like, and I'm guilty of this. Like, you don't want to take a picture of your your clean meals. What clean means. It's not fun. So when you splurge, you're like excited about it. You want to take a picture of it and put it on your Instagram or whatever. And then you're hashtagging IFYM. And in fact, I pulled it up while we were talking. This was the first image that came up with IFYM. Waffle and syrup Oreo.
Oh, shit.
Is that a new thing?
Oh my God!
Is that real? I've seen these before where it's actually fake.
I've seen the fake Oreos too.
That's the first thing that came up. So
if that's not one, it needs to.
The average person, think if you're a hardcore bodybuilder and you've always done it this way. Well, first of all, we have to get in the minds of how much BS do we see every day on Facebook, things that are sponsored, and your initial assumption is, this is so stupid.
Almost the Lord of the
cause
inflammation.
Inflammation, I've seen that a million times. So we're trained to kind of roll our eyes at everything that comes by. So then you start hearing about this IFYM, and it's always someone. Initially, it wasn't the bodybuilders doing it. It was some
skinny kids on the message boards. Yeah, exactly.
And you're like, they're posting
true.
pictures, their top charts, and you're like, and so I can see why they would initially.
They want to show how much junk food they can actually eat on it.
And that's just
really the
abusing
purpose.
it.
Yes.
Totally, that's not what it's supposed
Well,
to
we
be.
talked about this
that's
too,
the thing
like,
is
where
that-
people think, if it fits your macros, it's just like you only eat those. If it fits your macros, people only eat like donuts and pop tarts, right? But that's not essentially the case because you can still track and you can still eat your clean bro food or whatever you want to call
Absolutely.
it.
No, I have the Ron Coleman DVDs from back in the day. He was
ketchup on fries.
He was flexible dieting.
Exactly. I mean, they actually had Jake
Was he?
I watched those. Well, he didn't call it that.
real.
Right.
When he was
He'd
eating fries,
go to what was it, Outback or something? 3 times
What,
a
like
day.
on prep or something?
Yeah, 6 weeks out from, I had
But
those.
there was
When
no
you're running home,
Greatest bodybuilding
do whatever you do.
Yeah, buddy.
They just show him eating, like chewing his, but he'd have like steak and like fries and a ton of ketchup and
Yeah.
Yeah.
You can't have. And what's funny is everybody freaked out about the ketchup. Like that was the thing that everybody freaked out.
Fries.
You can't have ketchup. You can't. Like,
Yeah.
The fries are fine.
Yeah. So, well, those are potatoes. You know.
Yeah.
So.
I also think it's interesting because really it becomes down to, and this is more of a psychological question when it comes down to that bad food, kind of, you love posting it. It's that almost excitement, like you get, you know, the same part of your brain lights up with excitement when you're eating that bad food. It becomes almost like it's almost like this naughty cheat, like you feel like you're doing something bad. Like I told you, after prepping, you know, strict years ago, I was working at Texas Roadhouse, pounding ice cream in the back because it kind of gave me like a rush. I kind of like got off on this, like I shouldn't be doing
Put ice
this.
cream on the table. Like.
Yeah. But it was like, that's what I feel like junk food kind of, you know, and I think that, so really it comes down to, it's not really about,
laugh crying. While
yeah. Someone comes in, like, I'm not doing anything. It's like, it was like almost like I was like trying to cover up like a porn addiction. But like, I guess what I'm,
This table's getting real.
no, but what I'm getting at is that like people put that like food becomes so taboo, like you shouldn't eat that. We tell ourselves that all of a sudden you start getting like, weird relationships with it to where it's just totally, you know, so unhealthy. But I think that's where like the normal person, they just can't wrap their mind around it because we as society just held it's so taboo. It's so taboo.
One thing we may be missing too is that the reason maybe the backlash in the fitness industry is, let's say you've been doing it, you've had to suffer, right, for a long time, you've only eaten certain foods, and you see somebody who's able to get in shape doing this kind of thing, you're not going to feel happy for them,
No.
right? You're going to feel like,
pisses you off.
no, I did this for a reason.
You're like
right? This has to be the way it works because
That grumpy
You're
old man
suffering
on Saturday
so
Night
much
Live,
more.
in my day.
yeah, exactly.
You walked up hills both ways.
Yeah, right. So if you've only eaten broccoli, asparagus, and brown rice and chicken to get in shape, and you see people, you know, do it, well, and I always say the warrior cry of the anti-flexible. But what about overall health? You know what I mean? So you could get ripped on IFYM because now we have thousands of examples of people getting
Right.
People say, well, you can't. I'm like, wait. So I'm like, well, the science is there. We have the science. We've shown this. Lauren Collin and Bill Campbell even did a study comparing it, even though we know the scientific data is there, to show that there's no difference. If you want to eat clean, fine, that's fine. But flexible dieting is just as good with the same macros. But then they said, well, show me some pro who got. So they say, well, show me an IFBB pro who's done it and won a show or whatever. And I said, you know why I don't do it? Because it's not cool. Because it doesn't look cool. It's like wearing a damn hoodie while you're doing cardio, right?
Yeah.
There's no extra fat burning effect to that. It just looks kind of cool. You know what I mean? So some of them do it, you know, but they just don't talk about it.
Well, a few things. They cheat. They have the cheat meal,
Right.
And it's like if one of them split it out across the week.
Yeah.
Second of all, some of them did, like Ronnie Coleman. That was
Yeah.
flexible dieting, whether you want to call it or not.
Yeah.
And third of all, a lot of them are really dumb. Like they don't think to try it.
Well,
they don't think that it could be.
Scare outside the box.
But again, what you get back to, if you broke down clean versus unclean foods in a flexible diet, if we just took this is clean, this isn't clean, and we broke down someone's diet who's a flexible dieter, what percent, getting back to that unhealthy person who does cheat meals, what percent of your diet would be deemed unclean? Maybe 30?
20%.
Yeah,
I would say
you know,
20%.
So that's the general.
Typically,
We call that
rule.
80-20 rule.
Right.
And I guarantee you, again, when you look at somebody who's not a flexible dieter, they're eating more junk food than you. So really, you're the clean eater.
Right.
Whoa.
Well, and like I said, I go back and I say, okay, well now we have thousands, if not tens of thousands of examples of a lot of natural guys do flexible dieting and get shredded. You're going to tell me there's one IPB pro who gets leaner than Alberto Nunez? Good luck, right? So and then they put that up and I said, oh, well that. So then they said, well, there's no IPB pros who do that. It's like, okay, so hang on a second. Are you telling me steroids make it harder to get leaner? Okay. Well, are you saying that, okay, so they can get shredded, but maybe could they not build as much muscle?
What are you saying by that?
So what is your, like, when you break down the argument, there really is no argument. It's just an emotional thing where it's, you know, I want to justify the suffering I've had to go through. And it looks cool to suffer. And listen, when I started flexible dieting, I didn't do it because I wanted to find reason to eat Pop-Tarts and stuff. I would win. Like, I'm an athlete. I want to win, right? I want to do whatever it takes to win. If I thought eating clean was best to win, I would do that. The reason I started is because I found myself blowing up in the off season, and I could not. I was getting so far out of contest shape that I'd lose a lot of lean body mass trying to get back down to that contest shape as a natural. Every single case study we have on natural bodybuilders shows they lose at least 5 kilos of lean, at least 5 pounds of lean body mass dieting down for a contest. Every single case study, and they're hypogonadal by the time they're done. Like, contest prep on a natural bodybuilder crushes your lean body mass. Regardless of if you do it right, like, you are going to lose lean body mass.
Right.
So, and the harder you have to diet, the more likely you are to lose lean body mass. So I thought, okay, well, if I can stay closer to contest weight, I'm not getting so far outside of that, then maybe I can maintain more of my size going in. And what I found was when I started introducing myself some flexibility, instead of saying, oh, this is my last cheat meal, I'm never having another cheat meal again. Of course you're going to cheat again. You've done 5,000 times, you're going to do it again. Instead of doing that, say, okay, I'm trying to figure out what the macros are on that piece of pizza I just had.
So this, you kind of thought of this on your own.
Yeah.
Even like Layne, like you said.
And then I found the science afterwards.
Right, yeah. People ask me all the time, when was my last cheat meal? I haven't had a cheat meal in like
8 years.
Yeah, it's like 8 years.
Because I'm always eating mindfully.
Right. You don't consider cheating.
Even though I'm not weighing it out down to the gram, sure. I'm looking at it and saying, it probably has this, and this. And I'm keeping a mindful.
You're right.
But I'm 40 years old. I even remember when I was 16 reading all the bodybuilding magazines, and I go, why do they always eat oats and brown rice and whole wheat stuff? Like, what if you wanted a glass of orange juice? Couldn't you substitute that? What if you wanted a yogurt? Where does yogurt fit in?
Yeah.
If you like milk, can you kind of a little less meat and a little less rice, but have some milk? I remember thinking about flexible diet when I was 16 years old. And I was like, this doesn't make sense, but none of the bodybuilders did it that way.
It just wasn't the right
but they
thing
don't,
to do.
But what I said, I feel bad because I said most of them are stupid. They don't experiment enough.
Yeah.
Because if they did, they'd say, I'm gonna experiment during the off season. I'm gonna substitute things. They would never have a problem. He said substitute turkey for fish or substitute clean stuff.
Dr. Joe talked about this on our podcast. Remember, it all started with peas for Joe. Joe had a contest prep guy who had him eating green beans, and Joe says, well, I don't like green beans. Can I just do peas? No. And Joe's like, well, why not? And the guy couldn't give an answer. And I think part of the reason the science guys in the industry have been drawn to flexible dieting, you're hard pressed to find one guy who actually has a background in science who advocates for clean eating over flexible dieting. I don't know of any, to be honest. Maybe there's a couple, but anybody who actually has it, because a scientific person, the actual nature is to be inquisitive and not just accept what somebody tells you. Why? Why is that? Like, I remember anytime somebody would say something to me, I'll go, I'm very skeptical just by nature.
Right.
Like, I remember I was at the doctor's office and the nurse said, oh, well, you're having heartburn. Well, that means probably the baby has a lot of hair. And I was like, that sounds like gross.
Yeah.
Yeah, so, I think that's just by nature being more skeptical was how like Joe came to it, I came to it kind of on our own. And then once on the message board, I can remember just saying, people say, hey, is an apple okay? Hey, is this okay? And I said, yeah, it fits your macros, it's fine. And that's kind of where it came from was, I don't want to say I came up with it. I think Eric Courtney was actually the guy who first said IIFYM. But it was, everybody said, yeah, it's fine if it fits your macros.
Right.
Let me ask, because one thing I've often thought about is, some people, again, they can do really well, like, is if fitting your macros can be looked at something that's not even a 24-hour thing. Let's say all things being equal, you look at it a week, and you try to split your protein up accordingly. But maybe one day, it's carb cycling, but could you do it extreme? Could you do like one day of all veggies, and then have a super duper high day? Because there's some people that I know that like, when I don't want one cookie, I want 5 cookies if I'm gonna eat them. But what I'm saying is there's a lot of people I know like that. It's their personality type. So I'd say more than anything, it's like I don't want.
Moderation is for cowards.
Right. Like I know people that can have like the bite of chocolate and wrap it up, and then just every day they can say it. But
perfect.
like it's like I want 5 cookies. Can you? Well, when you're carb cycling and looking at that, is there a place that kind of you can meet halfway?
Is it like more like a weekly balance?
Yes.
Or is it a daily?
Yeah, I think so. the leanest I ever got was 224 pounds, and I went on Dex. I still was 16% body fat.
Well, I know
but,
Dex is out.
I know, but I looked good.
Mhm.
Other pictures, I looked great for me, not for you. You would have committed suicide.
We've been eating ice cream in the back crying.
Yeah.
You would have been eating ice cream.
I'm surprised Brett hasn't put his arm around Steve yet.
What I
Holding hand on the table.
As I got leaner, I was gonna make a product or something called putting the flex in flexible dieting.
Okay.
And I was gonna say,
Good.
we're not flexible enough. First of all, 1 day a week you can have an if it fits your calories day.
Yeah.
And not if it fits your macros day, because you're gonna get some protein. Now you could set minimums for protein and fats, but
Sure.
you can't. As I got leaner, I was like 1 day a week. I felt like it helped with adherence.
Yeah.
If I said, I can eat a lot of calories. Usually I'm like 6,000, but I got down to like 3,800 was my lowest. I
maybe.
know.
Wow.
But, that was the lowest, but I could get 3,800 calories 1 day a week of kind of crud. Now, could I get to like 6% body fat that way? Maybe not, but I do think we have wiggle room, and it's even with protein. If you get 1.6 grams 1 day, 2.2
Yeah.
Right.
another day, and then carbs and fats are kind of interchangeable. Once you have the bare minimums, so those you can just completely. 1 day you want to
It's
go.
1 day type of a
Well,
thing.
if you're the type that affects your training, but I found that it didn't affect my training. Have you found that?
There's really no. So we don't really have any data about carb cycle.
Yeah.
Right. We don't have data about that. I think you're looking at a hierarchy. It's what you have to look at, right? So yes, it's probably weekly calories are the most important thing.
Right.
And then
Yeah.
below that is weekly macros. And then below that is your daily calories. And then below that is your daily macros.
Yeah.
And you go down, and by the bottom or the absolute lower rung of the hierarchy is meal timing and these sorts of things, right? So what I'll tell people is, I would prefer that they get closer to their macros, just because I think there's something to be said with consistency in terms of what
Yeah.
you're feeding your body,
Yeah.
in terms of the macronutrients it's seeing. Because if you're used to a certain amount of carbohydrate, if one day you flip it, your body's more used to metabolizing carbohydrate. It's not used to metabolizing that much fat. It's like, let's say you're on a low fat, higher carb diet, and you flip it, you're doing high fat, low carb. There is a lag time for your body to get adjusted to that. So now, is it better to say, like you were saying, 1 day a week, say, no, don't worry about,
The intermittent fasting approach almost. Like,
and I'll tell people, I have clients that say, well, listen, I know I got this trip coming up, it's going to be 2 days, and I know I'm going to be eating more of this. Okay, well, let's cut 300 calories per day out of your week, right? And then give you some more flexibility when you go out there,
Right.
That's okay. And I'll say the same thing, like if you know you're going to be traveling, you're doing these sorts of things, what I'll always say is that the meals you can control when you're on vacation, go low carb, low fat, right? So at the meals you have less control over, you have more flexibility to fit it in. And usually what I'll do is I really try to have like lower fat, or if I'm traveling, lower fat, lower carb breakfast, and something that's just really easy. So like as it gets later in the day, I have more flexibility. If you have a pretty high carb, high fat breakfast, now you kind of like roped yourself into what you have available to you later in the day.
and speaking to that, everything else, your self-control is like a muscle. The more you use it, the weaker it gets. So we start at the beginning of the day, and we're going to be on our diet, and we're going to hit our breakfast to tea. And then what happens at 10 o'clock when you've had to make a million other choices throughout your entire day?
Psychology.
Yeah, you made a million choices throughout your day. You're left at the end of the day, and you don't have any more strength to give, that
And
willpower.
that's when you will have to be stressed. You will
Exactly.
Actually,
Do you want the
if you're like
psychologist
that-
to chime in about that?
Yeah. I was a biology, psychology.
This is
Yeah.
called ego depletion, and I am like, it's obvious there's ego depletion, but there was a new meta-analysis that came out that showed, well, yeah, I read it.
Yeah,
I actually read it, but she can comment on it.
So I was actually like, it's my first year of my master's thesis right now in psychology, and I'm studying the psychology of eating behavior. And for the whole, I would say the first 10 weeks of my first semester, I was meeting with my advisor every week, and I was trying to do a study on ego depletion, which is the idea that whole self-control is limited. And he was just kind of like iffy about it. And not long ago, the meta-analysis came out where they had, I think 47 different labs around the world replicating the same exact self-control protocol, and they found that the effect size was actually not as big as they initially thought. So now they're trying to say that maybe ego depletion is not an actual phenomenon. And there's actually another study by Carol Dweck, who's a psychologist at Stanford, who showed that whether or not you're limited in self-control depends on your belief about whether or not you think ego depletion is a real thing. So if you if you're taught to, if I say to you, hey guys, there's a thing called self-control, and guess what? It's unlimited. And then you guys will perform better on some cognitive task. And then another group will say self-control is limited. The more you use it, the less you have. So then they'll start going in that direction. So there's some conflicting evidence, and so I don't really know what to think right now. But there's a lot of evidence for it, and there's some against it. But
there was a good letter to the editor that was written on that I read that I was like, yeah. Because I think it's obvious.
Right.
I know for me, when later in the day, if I had a stressful day,
do
you find that?
What Corey Probst said on our show? She was at
self-control is fatiguing.
Yeah. Self-control is fatiguing.
Yeah.
Like that's I personally. Yes, I find that to be.
I mean, even like
Me too.
even little choices like, do I speed to get home? Like I'm not going to like that. Every choice we have, to me, and it's always made sense. Like the more you use a muscle, the weaker it
So
gets.
then, is flexible dieting bad for decision fatigue?
Well, I mean,
there's a balance.
Yes,
Great, what should I have? I can't take
some
it.
people trade one disorder for another. Absolutely, like they can. Well, I've got 2 grams of carbs left and 1 gram of fat. What can I use to get that? It's like, dude, you're done. Like you're fine. You know,
You're done.
If you're within 10 grams of every macronutrient, you're 100%.
I wrote a blog post like 14 months ago related to that called "Nobody Gives a Shit About Your Macros," and it's just not saying like no one cares. It's you know, if you're the kind of person who goes out to a restaurant and all you can do is talk about what do you think the macros are, talking about macros, what are your macros? That's I guess
it's bad as
anorexia or something.
Oh, God,
yeah, it's a form of disordered eating also. If that's what you're thinking about all the
flexible
time.
dieter, a vegan, and a CrossFit. You know?
Yeah. But you know, the cool thing I will say about self-control that I really like that no one here believes this right now is that there's this big misconception about being lean and adhering to a diet is about having more self-control. That's not true. When you a lot of people when they like fall off their diet, and I thought this too. I thought, oh my god, I just don't have enough I need more self-control. That's why it's not working. But there is so much research now that shows that it's actually the people who rely on their habits, which is my thesis, their habits more on self-control. They're the ones who are healthier year-round. They're the ones with lower BMI and with healthier lifestyles overall. So it's not that you need more self-control, you actually need to build better habits. So they're kind of two sides of the same coin. Because habits, you don't rely on self-control. There's no cognitive effort involved. There's no conscious thought. You kind of do it automatically.
So it
it's your
doesn't stress you out.
behavior.
That's funny because like
Right.
people ask me like, oh, doesn't it bother you to track like that? I'm like,
No. Okay, Layne, when you were visiting last fall, so I like to pay attention to people's eating behaviors, and I noticed this with Spencer Nabowski when he was around too. There is the way that you eat. You go for the low calorie butter. You go for the Splenda over the sugar. Instead of brown sugar, right.
Some egg whites.
Egg whites over whole eggs.
Not all whole
spray
eggs.
butter over like actual butter. These things add up throughout the day, and someone could look at you and be like, wow, he's trying so hard to be like so good with his diet or whatever. But I'm looking at it and going, no, this is his default. These are his habits. It takes no extra effort at this point for you. Now, if someone else to replicate the same behaviors might be a lot more difficult because they're not there yet. But for you, that's your automatic, and that's why you can stay lean year round. It explains so much. It makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, and that's it doesn't cause me any extra stress.
Right.
It doesn't. Like it's just something I'm so used to doing because it's become a habit.
And that should be
Same
the
with
goal.
training.
Now, if
Working out is a part of life.
right,
It's not
people say, "Oh man, you're so dedicated to go gym." I'm like, stop. It would take
Like,
dedication to
this is
keep me
normal.
out of the gym.
Right,
You know what I mean?
right, right.
This is not some heroic thing, you know. But now if I go up a level, like if I'm prepping for a contest and I'm getting, because to get that lean, yes, it does take another level of commitment and precision. For me to go up to that level, yes, that will be fatiguing for me. Like I will. Sorry, monster. I will get
It's
to a
not the
certain.
orange one, bro. Lay off the orange one.
So I will get to a certain point where I'm just like, I would just love to eat take a bite of a protein bar and not track it. You know what I mean? Like that sort of thing.
And that's what we're about that a week and a half
Like,
into
every little
yourself.
detail matters for you guys, but that's really, really extreme, and that's not what you guys do year round.
Right.
And that-
So, like
but-
short periods of time.
And this is, I think, one of the hardest things for a competitor is going from this where you are stressed because you have kicked it up a notch to, okay, how do you limit that? I just want one bite, because usually what happens after a show, you're eating Reese's peanut butter cups backstage, and you have donuts, and then what happens is you start guilting yourself,
Yeah.
and you never come back to just mindful eating.
So you know that's interesting.
That reverse diet is so important.
And I talk about, like, if we're talking about competitors or even like people who, like, most people die for something, right?
Yeah.
Like there's a vacation, there's a wedding.
It's an event, yeah.
I talk about like the transition period, which is like literally that day or that night after whatever it is whether your diet's finished. That's very crucial. I see people put a few pounds on and it's just the negative mental place it puts them in.
It starts them on a downward
It's a
spiral.
slippery
So-
slope, yeah.
And they just go into fucking mode.
Yep.
Right? There's-
And one day turns into a week, turns into I can't control my eating, and I'm
and then all of a sudden
down.
they're back on a diet again. So
And right.
I binged after every single one of my shows except the last series of shows. And I dieted for almost 35 weeks for those shows. And the difference was, I didn't count macros after I was done, I didn't want to. I just said, you know what? My cognitive restraint was, I'm going to eat until I feel physically full, and I'm not going to eat past that, because you know, physically full and mentally full are two totally different things.
Binge eaters are very familiar with that.
Yeah.
Yeah, so your stomach's not split.
Yeah.
Your
You're
food's
still
here, you're
yeah,
still eating.
yeah.
It's a weird feeling to be so full but want more food.
Do you feel like you can't stop?
I have
Yeah.
a separate storage tank for junk food. It goes here.
So I said, okay, I'm going to eat till I feel physically full, and then I'm going to stop. And I told myself that, and that was my goal going into it, right? So I had like some bites and stuff backstage after the. It was actually a guest posing. It was my last thing. I did a show, and then the next week I had a guest posing. So I did the guest posing, had a few things backstage, some cookies and stuff, and it was fine. Went to a restaurant. I had deep dish Chicago style pizza, and you guys know like deep dish Chicago style pizza, like
Illuminati's or Giordano's?
Giordano's, baby. Oh, so good, right? The original, OG. So I had 2 slices of that, a Corona, a little bit of something else, and I felt physically full. I still felt the compulsion to eat, but I felt physically full. I'm like, okay, I'm done. Got back to the hotel room, had like a stick of beef jerky before bed to kind of satiate me again, and went to bed. And you know what? I gained a pound. But I felt pretty good, and I hit my goal of, okay, I didn't go crazy. I
Yeah.
practiced cognitive restraint. And you know what? The rest of that reverse went so well because I was in a good mental place to
Yeah.
start.
You were
That's
realistic. You had a
huge.
realistic goal that you set.
Yeah, I wasn't
and then you
like,
had to paddle it back.
I wasn't like, okay, I'm gonna get out here and I'm gonna hit 30 grams of carbs, and like I didn't do that.
Yeah.
But there was you have to have some form of cognitive restraint. What we usually see is people do this like this prayer to the heavens. They're like eat whatever the hell they want, and then they act shocked when they gain 5 pounds. And they're like, oh, I can't believe this happened. Well, of course it happened. Like your metabolism's the lowest it's gonna be, and you ate whatever you wanted. Like, and listen, if somebody says I'm gonna go binge eat, I know I'm gonna gain body fat, I'll say, okay.
And half of it's water anyway.
If you're okay with gaining a lot of body
You take
fat,
responsibility for it. You're
if
fine
there
with
is
it. Cool.
if there is a mental checklist in your head and you say, I know I'm going to gain some body fat, I'm okay with it because I want to eat the shit out of this food tonight, that's okay.
Yeah.
But you have to have that inner conversation with yourself about what is realistic and what you're going to do. If you want to stay shredded, it's not going to happen if you go out and eat whatever you want.
Right.
Yeah.
It's so gratifying to see more and more competitors moving in that direction. I know for me, when I first competed in May of 2011, I was binging on almond butter before I even went out for finals, and within 2 weeks I gained back the 15 pounds that I lost.
Oh.
And
That's
then and then
over 10% of your body weight.
at that point that was what now, almost 6 years ago. I had kind of completely written off, competing is unhealthy and it's bad for you, this is what happens. And then after a while you kind of take some time off, you become more educated and a little more open-minded, and you realize, it doesn't have to be that way. So then when I competed again, and Layne, you were the MC for when Paul promoted his first OCB show in Tampa in November of 2014, that was kind of like my comeback show. And I remember I did like a 20-week ghost prep where I didn't really tell anyone about it because I didn't want to pressure of anything. But that was the first time where I took my time getting the body fat off, but I also had a very clear understanding that once I competed, that was not the end goal. That was just a pit stop, that I had so much more ahead of me, And when I was first competing, my thought was just do the show and worry about the aftermath after the show. Don't even think about it. But now I had a plan in place, and I understood, okay, I want to get this weight off, and I want to keep it off. So it's been kind of cool. Yeah, it's now been over 2 years since that show, and I've maintained within 5 pounds of stage weight. I can stay lean year round. It's not hard. I've made this my norm. And
did you have an immediate goal after you stepped off stage? Like, so talking to Layne, I have an immediate goal that it's not look related. I want to do a sprint triathlon coming up after my show. So it's an immediate thing for me. I need goals. I don't want it to always be about looks. Like a show is always about looks, and that gets old. Always, really your self-worth is based on how lean you are.
It's exhausting too.
It is. So I think it's important for competitors out there to have something that's not that's not physically related in terms of how you look, but maybe your goal is now your goal is now to deadlift 500 pounds or whatever it is.
Or even if it's not fitness related anymore, even if your priorities are allowed to shift, you do not always have to make lifting and bikini competitions or physique. That does not always have to be your first priority.
Because the more you focus on it, the more like hypersensitive you are about it, and it just.
And sometimes you can't enjoy it anymore.
No, and then it becomes exhausting.
Right. So I think
there should be a pamphlet outside of every auditorium as you go out. People just get as you're done competing, you get off stage.
Here you go.
Here's your trophy, and here's a pamphlet on reverse dieting.
Might be for Avatar. We should just get this out for Avatar.
If you don't want to blow up 20 pounds afterwards, read this.
And actually, so I've got a small group of women that I've been working with. So my therapist, who I go to, she's more like a life coach now. She will organize a small group of women, and we're teaching them flexible dieting. They're using Avatar Nutrition. For those who don't know, shameless plug, Avatar Nutrition. $10 a month, custom macro coaching. That's an automated system that I help design. And there, I just read a post in the Facebook group. We have a private Facebook group for them. We actually want to see if there's any difference in mental health as well. Like we're tracking mood status and whatnot. And these are people who have never done any kind of they're outside the fitness industry as far as you can be, and they're finding it very difficult to jump into macros. And
most of the world, I would say, is
and so I really want a meal plan. And what I tell them is, okay, I understand that. And some people do need those training wheels to start. But what I do tell people is, listen, this is a skill that it's like budgeting. Like if you want to get wealthy without budgeting, it can be done, but you're gonna have to make a lot more money, right? Make a lot more money because you're gonna be sloppy with your money, right? If you can budget, you can get there. You can get there faster, right? So if I teach you this skill, like budgeting is a skill, right? If I teach you a skill of tracking, it's gonna take you a few weeks, and you're gonna mess up stuff, and you're gonna suck at it at first.
It's gonna be frustrating.
But once you've gotten that skill down, unfortunately, people don't look at it that way. They just, I just want to lose weight now. I just want to lose it now. And again, we don't talk about that diet after the diet, right? Zoe had a great post, and I'll drop the mic and let you give your final thoughts.
Okay.
On Twitter, I remember this 2 years ago. I use this quote all the time.
Yeah. It was almost 5 years ago.
Was it 5 years ago?
Mm-hmm.
Time flies when you're
getting old.
It's just a baby.
Were you my sister by then?
That was 10 months before I was I heard through the grapevine.
So, she said, if the diet you're on, if you can't see yourself doing that in 3 months, or in 6 months, or in 12 months, you have to rethink your plan because it's going to fail. Something, I may have paraphrased, but it's something to that effect. I remember thinking, that's just brilliant. And it fits exactly with what the data says.
Yeah.
I can tell you as a trainer that used to give meal plans, before I'd ever heard, I owned a facility 12 years ago or whatever, and I gave everyone meal plans, and it was like the BC diet and my initials, and it was so strict, and they get shredded, and then they quit training with me and they blow up, and I'm like, they need me.
You're like, oh, that's not my fault.
They need me, they're reliant on me, because I gave them
you were giving them fish instead of teaching them to fish.
Right. I gave them the worst system. I did not teach them to fish, and I feel bad about that. But what can you do?
You do what you do.
Now you know better. But I think
a lot of people just won't listen to preaching trying to again getting back to family, not back to people who compete even. Just your everyday person who wants to lose weight. When you say, hey, let's learn how to track macros, it's
Or even learn how to read a nutrition label.
Right.
Yeah,
Learn
that's
like
step number
what
one.
are your calorie needs?
You will never learn more about nutrition. The most
Yeah,
I ever learned about
tracking.
nutrition was tracking my.
When you weigh and track.
I've done a PhD in nutritional science.
Mm-hmm.
The most I ever learned about nutrition was having to go through the store because I just didn't know. Right when I first did my first contest prep, and this is people complain now about tracking macros. Shut up! I used to have I had the complete book of food counts, and I had to go. Okay, Brussels sprouts.
Oh, I had that.
Pages.
My first competition,
Yes.
I had that too. In the back of my workout journal, I had all the lists of foods that I liked and what the calories were on.
Yes, yeah. So I had
Layne
That's
had-
horrible.
we had to pick through
No,
books to find
I
it.
could
Layne
not
had to
do
use an
that.
abacus.
I weren't even born yet.
Right, so 2001, yeah. So I would have to look through the page and find it, okay, and it would just give the serving size. So I'm like, all right, so I got to divide the serving by the amount I had by the serving size, then multiply the protein, carbs, fats
Oh,
by
I know,
that.
you had to use
multiply
math.
serving, like I was doing it on a sheet of paper, I did that. But I learned so much about nutrition because I didn't know what a high protein food was.
Sure.
I didn't know what a high carb, low fat food was. I didn't know what a high fat, low carb food was. But I remember one day I spent 3 hours in the grocery store just going, is this high protein? No. Is this high protein? No. Is this high protein? Is this low carb? No. Is this,
Right.
And I based my diet around what would fit,
Yeah.
And
That's our
so-
second most fun game, is going to the grocery store reading labels. We do that on a date all the
You
time.
go, it fits.
I've also found
I've
also found this
look at this compliment thing. We can use this.
I also found a negative and inverse association of how much you give a shit cost-wise versus
Yeah.
how few carbs are in it.
That's
right?
so true.
It's like, this bread has 1 less gram of carbs, but it's $2 more, it doesn't matter, throw it in the cart, you just don't care if you can get the lower calorie. But, yeah, it's again, I'm a data-driven guy, so if I had data out there to say, hey, there was this system that was better, I'm all for it, But right now, I feel like this is one of the best systems we have, and hopefully, what we're going to do is get people better resources so that we can give them those training wheels to get them to a better spot to help them. And like with Avatar, one of the things that's actually helped the most is we have a Facebook group with like several thousand members, and the support between the people. And when people are struggling with something, somebody comes out and says, "Oh, I was struggling with that, but this is what I did." Right?
Yeah.
And
The
that
amount of
human element-
macro-friendly food shared on there must be disturbing.
It's crazy. Well, we have the flexible dieting queen, Kate Robertson. Do you know
Yes,
Kate?
the macro experiment. She's great.
She is the best macro recipe. It's unbelievable. If you go to her Instagram, I think she has almost 100,000 followers now. She started
Wow.
the first time I saw her was like a few years ago. She had like 500. She
I
just
remember when
started
she emailed
posting-
me or you via me.
Yeah,
I go,
yeah, so
this girl wants to do an experiment.
yeah. So
What do you think? Yeah.
But yeah, there's just so many options out there now, and really it is a great age to be alive, for flexible dieters.
And a lot of the criticisms against flexible dieting, like if people like to eat clean, whatever that means.
There is no objective definition of clean, by the way.
But we all kind of know, like,
What?
ice
We
cream,
have an idea.
cookies, right? But like, if you like to eat that, you can eat mostly all clean foods and just
And
not.
still do
But be
flexible
flexible because life forces you to be flexible sometimes.
Right.
You can't. And also, like, if you do compete, then if you compete, then you don't, and you know that these foods tend to make you bloat or something. But you can eat those most of the year in small amounts, and then avoid them before the prep. But the criticisms just don't hold up.
No.
And I don't really mind. Like today, I'm what am I, 2.5 weeks out? Barely that.
2.5.
I had Chick-fil-A. I had.
What is the deal with Chick-fil-A? Why is everyone obsessed with Chick-fil-A?
Because it's great
I've
macros.
never had it.
It's
Ever
great
either.
macros.
I've never had it.
It's amazing.
Missing out. Great macros.
No,
And then we
I've
had
never
Pokey
a line.
at the Pokey spot, and then I had some popcorn, and like it might make me, it's not my normal foods. If it makes me bloat or whatever, more sodium, I don't know, whatever. But I know it's like again, like it's much better than like me taking a bite of one of these things on like clean eating program that I followed, years ago, and then and then cheat. And that's the point. It's mindful, and I really think this is a good video for people out there that even if you do count macros or if you're familiar with it, this is a good video for someone out there that's not even aware of what macros are. Like what are these macros? What's a macro? People keep talking about those. Like invest some time into just learning about that, and then just take 2 weeks and don't change your diet. just start tracking, and all of a sudden you just become aware.
Just pay attention. Yeah. There was a survey, I think it was in the early 2000s, where they surveyed a bunch of Americans, and they found that, I want to say this is a wide range because I don't remember the number. Somewhere between 40 to 80% of Americans didn't understand what a calorie was, and they don't understand their own energy needs. And I think that's a shockingly high proportion of people who have no clue. When you say that's 500 calories, they go, okay, because they have no idea like how to interpret it or put it into any kind of context.
I mean, to burn a calorie, it's kind of a confusing.
Right, and they're like, what's that? They don't know. They don't know.
To raise one degree of water, 1
milliliter of water,
Right.
1 degree.
But even to the average person,
4.18 joules. Like, what does that mean?
they go, what? But they go, because you can ask someone, Layne, what do you think? You're the average, let's say you're the average American, slightly overweight, dumpy looking guy. You say, Layne, you're not. How many calories do you need to maintain your body weight? They have no clue.
No, I have no idea.
They have no idea. So when you see like this gummy bear package, like this has 140 calories, they don't know, okay, that's, that's like, what do you want to say, like 5% of my day's energy needs. They don't understand. I'm not going to do the math right now. They don't understand any of that. So even the most basic instruction of here's around what you might need for your day, and here's how this fits into your day.
Why is this not taught in schools? Why is this not educated in schools? Like, I feel like schools teach you stuff you don't. Not to get too much on a anti-education, because that's a whole nother 3 hours.
That's a whole nother podcast.
Libertarian Layne. But why don't we teach people budgeting and how to do their taxes and proper, and like not even proper nutrition,
how to be an entrepreneur.
Food, absolutely. So that's information they actually need. Like just even a few months of that.
That's what YouTube is for, I guess now.
But I'll end with this. There was a survey done in 2007. I remember because I wrote this paper in 2007 for one of my classes actually, and it was is a calorie was the name of the paper. And there was a survey of Americans done, and 70% of Americans believed the foods you ate were more important than the amount of calories you consumed. So what you ate was more important. What you ate was more important than how much you ate, right? And I made the argument. I was supposed to be an argument, counter argument paper, and I made the argument for and against. And a lot of people. I remember there was a Quest Nutrition did a video a while back, and they actually took it down, much to their credit. It was by a guy named Jonathan Baylor, where he said that the foods you ate were more important than the calories you ate. And they make a lot of emphasis on the thermic effect of food, right? Like it takes energy to get energy out of food. Protein has a greater thermic effect of food. And they would point out like foods that were important to eat, like vegetables and all this. That's like, saying that is like saying, I've heard people say they got to create expenses because they have taxes due. That's stupid. That's like saying I'm going to pay Bret $10 to avoid paying Steve $3.
Sure,
right? So it's the same thing because the thermic effect of food is only about 30. It's like 30% greater for protein. 70%. It doesn't. You still have to account for those calories. Yes, if you eat a higher protein diet, is a higher thermic effect, but it's protein and fiber. If you have a food that tends to be like better for body composition, it's not because it's magic, it's because it tends to have higher protein or higher fiber, right? And when you equalize for those, you just don't see differences in studies. Especially, actually you don't even need to equalize for those. If you equalize for calories, most of the differences go away. If you equalize for calories and protein, pretty much all the differes go away. And then if you equalize for fiber, there is zero difference.
That's what I was going to ask you. I kind of think this, but I'd like to know your guys' opinion. I think if you do track and you're fit and healthy, you could get all of your carbs from sugars and your physique and health wouldn't change at all. You could eat all fruit or whatever. You
so it might change how you feel.
As long as
how you feel. So like if I eat just pure gummy bears, it might not be. But if I eat fruit, it doesn't make me feel bad. If I eat, you could eat fruit and.
Well, what I tell people is like, people say, well, sugar is associated with obesity. By the way, sugar consumption in the last 10 years has gone down. Obesity has continued to go up linearly. So there actually is no association anymore.
But calories.
Sorry, Gary Taubes.
Calories have gone up, Layne?
Calories
have gone up.
So, because we said, okay, stop consuming sugar a few years ago. People say, okay, because people have
Almond butter.
People have largely.
Doesn't matter what we're
What's
told.
crazy-
We'll
what's
do it and
crazy
then eat
is
more calories.
People have largely done what the government has told them to do in terms of food.
Yeah.
Right? In the 70s, we stopped eating fat. Right?
Yeah.
They maintained that. Fat intake went down. And then in the early 2000s, we stopped eating sugar, and we went down in sugar intake. Obesity continued to go up. Well, the association with sugar is because people tend to overconsume it because it's not satiating, right? If you drink a Coke, it's not like, okay, that was 50 grams of carbs, so I'm gonna take that 50 grams of carbs out. It's like, you're drinking that on top of what you already eat, right? So with fruit, why there's not the same association? People who eat a lot of fruit tend to be leaner, healthier, right? Why is that if it's high in sugar? Because fruit has fiber with it, and people don't tend to overeat on fruit, right? So it's a calorie, protein, and fiber issue. And people have asked me, Layne, are you saying that, I could just eat all sugar? And I think you could take anything to an extreme and make it ridiculous. But I mean, based on the
I don't
data,
think you can.
based on the data,
The Twinkie diet proves that.
based on the data,
It wouldn't be. You wouldn't.
right.
It's not practical.
But you can.
It's not practical.
Yeah.
It's scientifically.
There's a study though.
And it'll feel like crap.
There's a study that showed all
Yes.
the one group's carbs were all sugar and the others were complex, and the sugar group, but everything was equated. The sugar group actually lost a little bit more fat. I don't think it was significant,
Yeah, exactly. And that's, again, people, it's funny, and when you show that to somebody like Gary Taubes or somebody who's just a low sugar, low carb zealot, the response is always a visceral, emotional, I don't believe that, right? I mean, we were at Epic. Gary Taubes is giving a speech, and he said, he's going through all the problems with, it's him and Alan Argon having a debate. And he's going through, Joe Rogan, are you listening to this? You haven't heard on your show. Because I will eviscerate Gary Taubes.
Was Gary on Joe Rogan's show?
Yes. So, Gary Taubes is going, so Alan Argon's quoting all these studies, right? And just crushing Gary Taubes. And Gary Taubes goes, well, I don't believe that one. Well, that one was funded by this. Well, that one was funded by that. And then he says, then he has the audacity to say, I'm funding studies that's going to prove that it should be. And I raised my hand. Remember this, Bret? I raised my hand and said, so let me get this straight. The studies that were funded for Alan, you don't believe, but the one that you're going to fund is okay. And then when the study came out, it actually disproved his hypothesis. And he said he didn't believe it.
But remember Alan said, if given enough research, would you change your mind? He said, no. He goes, no. Would you?
Of
I
course.
cannot believe he admitted that. That means you're not a scientist, you're a zealot.
You're a zealot.
You're not a scientist.
You're a cultist. You're a religious zealot. I did a whole, years ago, my 5th video log was actually about intermittent fasters.
That was the one where I got your
Martin
post.
Beckman. Yeah, I remember Martin, like, the high priest of intermittent fasting, as he calls himself. Sorry, Martin, sorry. He went crazy because what I said was, I think intermittent fasting is fine for fat loss. I think it's probably a little bit suboptimal for muscle mass based on the data we have about protein distribution. And he took that and was went on.
And you were in no way being intense or anything.
Not.
It was very professional.
And Martin went on this rant on Twitter about me not knowing what the hell I was talking about, this and that. And I'm just like, guy, where'd this come from? So
dramatic.
Yeah. So it's. I think at the end of the day, a lot of people, and we could go a whole other, and it's we need to go. But we gotta retrain.
Yeah.
But I think people like the idea of belonging to something, and they want to sit.
I told that to Brad Schoenfeld when we first met. I said, fitness is religion, and he was a few years later, he's like, God, you're so right about that.
Yeah,
We want to belong.
CrossFit proves that.
Yeah.
CrossFit, paleo, ketogenic diet. I put up a ketogenic diet video. I had anti-ketogenic diet people and pro-ketogenic diet people both mad at me. It's just so weird, and I'm just over here don't hate me, hate the data, guys. It just, at the end of the day, there is no magic. I'm sorry, there's not. I went to do my PhD wanting to find magic foods, because if I found magic foods, we'd be balling in a friggin' 10,000 square foot house with crystals on the floor. You know what I mean?
But pretending, but giving, I think the thing that take away a lot of people out there that aren't familiar with a lot of this stuff, the everyday dieter out there, it's more practical just to say, I'm going to cut out sugar. It's the easier route to say, I'm not going to consume that.
It's easy. Yeah.
But when you really invest in learning about macros and learning about how to eat mindfully, there aren't such things as good foods and bad foods. It's eating in moderation. When you learn that by counting macros, it changes your life.
You know, I think the thing that's really encouraging about flexible dieting too is that I don't know of a single person, and maybe you guys do. I don't know of a single person who's been a flexible dieter and that said, actually, I kind of like clean eating better.
Right.
It's always the other way around.
I have to make this point. Give me a high five.
Yeah.
I have to make this point, and I'm done.
Did you like her more than my abacus?
Yeah, abacus is pretty good. Yeah, high five. So, our viewers out there under 20. So Lauren and Bill Campbell and Lauren Collins' study, they surveyed them afterwards. Okay, so they had like 27 people in the study, right? 13 in one group, 14 in another. And they polled them, and they had one group doing a flexible diet, one doing a meal plan. And they polled every single one of them, and they said, if you had the choice now, what would you choose? And every single one except one person said that they would choose a flexible diet. Even people who crushed it on the meal plan, who did really, really well, they said, I would choose a flexible diet.
Are they going to publish that?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I was
they're working
asking
on
about that. I hope they do. You know, adding to that, when
and then we're done.
I think at this point there are a number of studies showing that. I think the big one was in 2005 where it's called the A to Z study, where they compared 3 different diets. They compared the Atkins, the Orange diet, and the Zone diet, and comparing weight loss between the 3 groups, and they found that weight loss was equal, and actually the biggest determinant of weight loss success was dietary adherence, not any specific diet. But the other thing I'll add to that from I've talked a lot about quality of life and mindset and everything. I think that if you can stick to a meal plan and your dietary adherence is 100%, that's awesome. However, if your quality of life has gone to shit because of that, that's not a win. You are not better off for it. And so I think, you don't want to just look at your adherence. You want to look at how it's affecting your day-to-day life. How do you feel physically, mentally? Are you in a shitty mood? Are you a horrible person to be around? Has your boyfriend broken up with you and left because you're just a witch? Like, those things matter too. So I think flexible dieting in that regard allows you to maintain high dietary adherence and adhere to the, I guess you can call it the hierarchy of nutrition, or the nutrition pyramid, where overall calories matter most, and then protein, and then carbs and fat, and then nutrient timing, and then meal frequency, supplements, etc., and so on and so forth. It allows you to pay heed to that while maintaining some semblance of a life, and without losing your personality, and without becoming completely consumed by your contest prep or whatever it is that you're preparing for. So that matters too, not just body count.
Absolutely.
I love that.
Well,
Yeah,
guys,
it does.
thank you
Yeah,
all.
that
I think that was a great podcast. High fives all around. And
Solid. Thank you.
we're out.
Thanks.